This is not a justification for any untimely death of Miss Taylor or anyone else. It's simply a restatement of facts in an orderly process to get to the facts so we can prevent tragedies like this in the future. And you suggesting that what? You're going to ban search warrants because it was served at the wrong door and this had nothing to do with Miss Taylor is not true. We had the announcement yesterday of an indictment in one of the officers involved in the death of Breonna Taylor in a search warrant service that happened at her apartment. This is in Kentucky. Many of you have heard about the case. Listen, folks, these cases are all difficult. And if I may quote the great Andy McCarthy, one of the most talented lawyers I know, he is also a Fox News contributor where I work. He said yesterday a line I want you to all keep in mind. I'll bring it up at the end of this segment again. Ladies and gentlemen, tragedies happen all the time. They do. They're not to be downplayed. They're not to be scoffed at. They're tragedies by name, making them tragic, obviously. Meaning bad things. Bad things we should all consider and think about. Why? Because when bad things happen, there may be a way to avoid those bad things repeating themselves in the future. That's why we in the news business and the commentary business discuss bad things on our show, because we hope there's some either public policy or societal family-based proposal we can do to stop these bad things from happening again. Breonna Taylor's dead. Her death is tragic. But ladies and gentlemen, it's not an excuse for riots again, and it's not an excuse, definitely not an excuse, for a misinformation campaign that's intentional to cause more riots to advance a political agenda. And it's happening again. We are running at a point right now in our country, unfortunately, tragically, intended to say it that way, tragically, where almost every police use of force incident that involves someone who is a minority turns into a misinformation campaign to get people riled up to burn down American cities. It's insane where we are right now. I'm obviously not questioning. Matter of fact, I fully support everyone's right to protest, enshrined by our Constitution and our own morals. There's nothing more American than the act of protesting. That's how we got that's how we have America now. You have no right anywhere, morally, ethically, constitutionally, local law, state law, anywhere, to riot and attack people and burn their property. I don't know where you think you got that right from, but it doesn't exist. Excuse me. So what's happening here? I'm going to give you the facts behind the Breonna Taylor case in Kentucky, because you've been told a lot of things. Again, the basic facts: police were serving a search warrant, a legitimate search warrant, on the apartment of Breonna Taylor. Breonna Taylor is not named on the search warrant. The boyfriend in the apartment was not named on the search warrant, but the apartment was. It was not the wrong door. The police were at Breonna Taylor's apartment where they were supposed to be. You've probably also been told that they served it and executed it no knock, meaning they didn't knock and say, police, police. They just kicked the door in. That is not true.
That's what I've heard.
None of those things are true. But you've been told that. Because why? Because groups out there, not committed to police reform or police accountability at all, they're committed to one thing: riots and destruction, because they're Marxist terror groups, have told you that. They went to Breonna Taylor's apartment to serve a search warrant. It was the wrong door. They didn't knock. They barged in and shot Breonna Taylor. That's not true. Do you understand that's not true? You're being lied to. This misinformation campaign is literally killing people as you incite people to riot and destroying their lives and causing, two cops were shot last night in Kentucky in these riots. Let's go to a very, again, sober analysis by one of the finest lawyers commenting on television now, Andy McCarthy at National Review. It'll be in the show notes. Again, please read it. Facts matter. Process matters. The second component of law and order, the order part, means process and facts. That's what that means. Headline: a just decision not to file homicide charges in the tragic Breonna Taylor case. Let's go through these elements one by one. The leftist media lunatics and other blue check marks out there and BLM Marxist terrorists want you to believe that, again, the police knocked on the wrong door, didn't knock at all, kicked in the door and started shooting the place up like it was Tombstone. That is not what happened. Do you understand? That is not a fact. That is a lie from Andy's piece. Quote, much of what you've been told about the case turns out to be not true. This is another hands up, don't shoot urban legend of police brutality. Attorney General Cameron in Kentucky explained that the police did not execute a, quote, no-knock warrant before entering Miss Taylor's apartment. They knocked and announced themselves as police before forcing entry shortly after midnight. How they came to be at Miss Taylor's home with a search warrant based on probable cause that evidence of narcotics crimes would be found is part of the story the social justice warriors would have us omit. It needs telling. I'll get into that next. Do you understand whether the warrant was just, I feel like I have to explain this just basically using my police background because there's so much misinformation polluting the brains of honest people out there. You can have a no-knock warrant signed off by a judge. What does that mean? When are they served? No-knock warrants are typically high-risk warrants, where the very act of knocking and saying, police, search warrant, someone will start shooting through the door and it'll kill you. Those aren't that common. They're not rare, but they're not that common. They're typically done, folks, when there's a history of violence, the guy you're arresting or woman you're arresting, it's their third or fourth time. They've resisted arrest 4 or 5 times. They have a known history of weapons possession criminally. You get what I'm saying? You're not going to knock and say, hey, police, because they'll shoot through the door. Are they overused sometimes? Yeah, I'm not going to deny that either. Probably deserves a bit of a review, especially for the libertarian side of me. Eliminating them, really stupid idea. There are cases they are perfectly viable alternatives. This warrant may have been issued as a no-knock warrant. It was not executed as one. Do you understand that? The left is purposefully is conflating those two variables to make you believe the police didn't even knock and just kicked the door in. The warrant could have been a no-knock warrant. That doesn't mean it was executed that way. And in this case, it was not. That is not a fact. It is a lie. The police knocked and announced and said they were the police. How do we know? Witnesses corroborated that they heard police warrant. Just because you have a warrant that gives you the ability to no-knock and breach the door does not mean you're going to execute it that way. And in this case, they didn't. They executed it as a standard knock and announce. Police announce search warrant. That's just not true. It's just not true. Again, if you believe in law and order, the second portion of that order is always left out. We know what laws are. Law. We need laws. Good. We have laws. The order portion means process, means review based on facts of tragedies. The facts, so we don't repeat them. If your solution to the Breonna Taylor case is let's eliminate no-knock warrants, you're basing it on a lie. This was not a no-knock warrant. Do you understand that? That's not process, that's stupidity. Let's prevent tragedies like this in the future by banning no-knock warrants. Sir, this wasn't a no-knock warrant and the execution. Shh, don't tell anybody that. I need to make a political argument. That's your idea of solving problems? Solving problems not related to the tragedy you're trying to prevent? Gets worse. Some people suggest they were at the wrong door and, Breonna Taylor had nothing to do with any of this. Ladies and gentlemen, listen, again, the death of Breonna Taylor is tragic. Let's just stop right there. But please stop suggesting that there was no connection to this warrant looking for drugs at all. That's not true. Again, from the McCarthy piece, these facts matter. At 12:40, the police knocked on the door and announced themselves as police. Here we go. These two police officers, Breonna Taylor and her boyfriend, this guy Walker, Mr. Walker, were startled out of their sleep. Walker was a licensed owner of a Glock, said he didn't know it was the police at the door, speculated it could be the ex-boyfriend Glover, who was suspected of drug dealing, breaking in. For their part, the police expected Miss Taylor would be alone. They hadn't even seen her now boyfriend, Walker, enter the dwelling with her. So there's confusion here, folks. Can we all agree? It was dark, and there was a long hallway between the bedroom and the front door. There was screaming. Walker, the new boyfriend, fired as one of the officers came through the door, striking him in the leg. So Breonna Taylor's boyfriend fired first, severely wounding him. These two other officers returned fire into the hallway in the general direction of where they believed the shooter was. When the smoke cleared, Walker was unharmed, but Taylor had been struck 6 times. FBI ballistics experts eventually determined that Cosgrove, one of the officers, fired the fatal shot. Tragic, folks. Clearly. Not to be diminished or downplayed. We give the police a lot of responsibility. Every use of force that results in a death must, in a civil society, be reviewed. Must, whether administratively or, if criminal charges warrant, criminally. But that review is a process based on facts. So suggesting that Miss Taylor, rest her soul, was totally uninvolved with the warrant when the warrant was tied to her apartment because of her ex-boyfriend, Mr. Glover, who apparently there was probable cause there may have been drugs and money in that apartment, is just wrong. They were not at the wrong door, and they didn't execute a no-knock warrant. None of that is in fact true. And another key component of this is the police did not kick down the wrong door, no-knock style, and shoot up the place. They were fired at first by Miss Taylor's new boyfriend, who, full disclosure of the facts, was a licensed owner. Says he was confused about who it was. I'm putting that all out there for you to judge. Process, order, facts. But suggesting the police kicked in the door and started shooting is false. That's fake. That's deliberate misinformation. The things I thought Facebook and the others were trying to prevent. Yet you can see it everywhere on social media. These terrible police kicked in the wrong door, didn't even knock, and started shooting. That's not true. None of that's true. One final point from this piece. Is this important? From Andy McCarthy. Again, facts, ladies and gentlemen, process, order, civility. Final takeaway from Andy's article. Do you not have a final takeaway there? You're shaking your head there. Oh, there you go. Oh, sorry. When she was killed, Breonna Taylor was 26, a hospital emergency room technician who hoped to become a nurse. But over the years, she had gotten involved with Glover. This is the first boyfriend, not the boyfriend who was in the apartment that night. We got to be clear on that. Glover's a 30-year-old, twice convicted drug dealer. Though Taylor was never targeted as was never a targeted suspect, the New York Times reports that Miss Taylor was entangled in the frequent police investigations of Glover. Taylor remained romantically involved with him, though he had spent years in prison. This is not a justification for any untimely death of Miss Taylor or anyone else. It's simply a restatement of facts in an orderly process to get to the facts so we can prevent tragedies like this in the future. And you suggesting that you're going to ban search warrants because it was served at the wrong door and this had nothing to do with Miss Taylor is not true. It did have something to do with Miss Taylor's relationship with this ex-boyfriend who was suspected and was a twice convicted drug dealer. You're just making the rest up because you're not interested in order.
You just heard Dan Bongino.